Something serious is happening in Eastern Europe right now. Germany, the economic engine of Europe, is sending thousands of troops to the edge of Russia's border. For the first time since the Cold War, Germany is permanently deploying troops to Lithuania, a small NATO country sitting just a few miles from Russian territory. This isn't just a training mission. This is the real deal. So why now? Why is Germany suddenly taking a bold military step after years of being cautious? And what does this mean for the fragile peace in Europe? To understand the full picture, we need to start with one key fact. Lithuania shares a border with Kaliningrad, a heavily armed Russian exclave filled with missiles, tanks, and thousands of Russian soldiers. Since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, NATO has been on high alert. Baltic countries like Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia have begged for stronger defense, worried they could be next. And Germany? It finally responded. After decades of military hesitation, Berlin has decided. It's time to put boots on the ground, permanently. By 2025, Germany plans to deploy around 4,800 troops, including tanks, artillery, and logistics units. And this isn't just symbolic. They'll have their own barracks, their own supply lines, and full combat readiness. Lithuania is building the infrastructure for them, fast. The country is spending millions to host the German brigade. Because for Lithuanians, this is about survival. Let's be clear, this is not just Germany helping out a neighbor. This is NATO sending a message to Russia. We are ready, and we are not backing down. But here's the twist. While Germany arms up in the east, tensions are rising fast. Is this deterrence? Or are we sliding into a new Cold War? To really understand why Germany's move matters, we have to zoom out. This isn't just about Lithuania. It's about an invisible line, stretching from the Arctic Circle in the north, all the way down to the Black Sea in the south. A line that divides NATO from Russia. This eastern edge is now one of the most heavily militarized zones in the world. Thousands of troops, dozens of warplanes, massive radar systems, all sitting on high alert 24 hours a day. And it's no accident. Since 2014, after Russia annexed Crimea, NATO has been slowly building up its presence on this front. But it wasn't until 2022, after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, that NATO hit the gas pedal. NATO sent in what it calls enhanced forward presence units. Think of them like mini armies, each one stationed in a different Baltic country, with troops from Canada, the UK, the US, Germany, and others. They're small but fast, designed to hold the line until bigger forces arrive. But there was a problem. These units were only temporary, rotating in and out. No permanent bases, no deep supply chains. That's where Germany's new move is a game changer. By setting up a permanent presence, Germany is doing what NATO has long avoided. It's planting a flag. Permanently in a country that borders Russia. This breaks with years of NATO caution. In fact, after the Cold War, NATO made a promise to Russia. No permanent bases near its borders. That was part of the 1997 NATO-Russia Founding Act. But NATO now says Russia broke that trust by invading Ukraine. So, that old promise? No longer binding. And here's the kicker, Germany's move is just the start. The United States is beefing up forces in Poland. The UK is investing in Estonia. NATO is expanding its command centers across the region. So what we're seeing is a massive shift in European security. Not just a response to war in Ukraine, but a long-term strategy to contain Russia. And Germany's new base in Lithuania? It's the frontline fortress in this new chapter. To truly understand why this German deployment is so important, we need to look back, way back. Because for Germany, sending troops to the east is not just a political move. It's a deep emotional and historical shift. After World War II, Germany was broken. Not just physically, but morally. The horrors of Nazi aggression left the country with a deep commitment to pacifism. Never again war. That became Germany's mantra. Even after the Cold War, Germany kept its army small. It avoided combat missions. It spent far less on defense than countries like France or the US. Many Germans simply didn't want to believe that war could return to Europe. In fact, for years, Germany was criticized by its allies. Why won't you pull your weight? They asked. Why is Europe's biggest economy acting like a bystander? But then came a moment that changed everything. February 24th, 2022. The day Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Missiles rained down. Tanks rolled in. Cities burned. In Germany, it finally woke up. Just 3 days after the invasion, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz stood in parliament and said something historic. He called it a Zeitenwende, a turning point. Germany would now invest over 100 billion euros into its military. It was a complete reversal of decades of military hesitation. It wasn't just about money. It was about mindset. For the first time in modern history, Germany was ready to take on a frontline role, not just in economic leadership, but in military defense. And so, the plan to station German troops permanently in Lithuania isn't just strategic. It's symbolic. Germany is stepping out of the shadows of its past and into a new, uncertain future. But this shift hasn't been easy. Inside Germany, there's still debate. Some politicians fear that Germany is moving too fast. That rearming could reignite old fears, especially in countries that remember past German invasions. So this isn't just about tanks and bases. It's about history, memory, responsibility, and whether Germany, once the cause of Europe's darkest wars, can now become its strongest defender. Now let's flip the map. Let's try to see things from Russia's side. Because in Moscow, this German troop deployment isn't just a NATO routine. It's a red flag, a provocation. Imagine being a Russian military strategist. You see NATO growing stronger, closer by the day. And now, you see German troops, less than 150 kilometers from your soil. To Russia, that's not defense. That's encirclement. And that brings us to Kaliningrad, Russia's heavily militarized outpost wedged between Lithuania and Poland. It's not just a base. It's a fortress. Kaliningrad is armed to the teeth. It holds Iskander missiles, capable of carrying nuclear warheads. It's home to powerful radar systems, fighter jets, and Baltic naval forces. And it's cut off from the rest of Russia, surrounded by NATO countries. This makes Kaliningrad both a shield and a sword for Russia. It can defend the Baltic Sea, and also strike deep into Europe if tensions explode. And now, with German tanks setting up shop just next door, Russia is on high alert. It's increasing drills, testing missiles, and warning that NATO is playing with fire. In fact, Russian officials have directly accused Germany of breaking past agreements. They say NATO promised no permanent forces in the east. And now, that trust is gone. But here's the twist. Russia isn't just reacting. It's preparing. It's quietly modernizing Kaliningrad's military tech, deploying advanced hypersonic weapons, setting up coastal missile batteries, and even talking about nuclear readiness. So what we're looking at is a dangerous standoff. Two military giants, Germany and Russia, staring each other down in a tiny strip of land. One move too far, and the sparks could fly. And this isn't just about Lithuania. If things go south in Kaliningrad, it could drag in Poland, Latvia, Estonia, and yes, even the United States. Now, let's talk about one of the most dangerous pieces of land in Europe. It's just 65 kilometers wide, a narrow corridor of farms, forests, and highways. It's called the Suwałki Gap. The Suwalki Gap connects Lithuania and the other Baltic states to the rest of NATO. And it also sits between two of Russia's strongest military zones. Belarus to the east, Kaliningrad to the west. If war ever broke out, this gap could be NATO's biggest nightmare. Because if Russia ever captured the Suwalki Gap, it would cut off the Baltic states from their NATO allies. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania would be surrounded. No reinforcements, no escape. It's a geopolitical chokehold. That's why Germany's deployment in Lithuania isn't just symbolic. It's strategic, a signal to Russia. If you touch this gap, we will be ready. But here's the twist. Russia doesn't need to invade to win. Just constant pressure, cyber attacks, disinformation, border provocations. The goal? To make NATO look weak and divided. And while all eyes are on Europe, guess who's watching quietly from the east? China. Beijing is analyzing every move NATO makes, because it's asking a very important question. If war breaks out over Taiwan, will NATO be distracted? In fact, China and Russia have been growing closer. Joint military drills, shared technology, economic partnerships, and both see NATO's moves as a threat to the multipolar world they want. That's why what happens in Lithuania isn't just about Germany or NATO. It's part of a global chess game, a test of Western resolve. If NATO blinks, China sees weakness. If NATO stands firm, China might rethink its own ambitions. And in this global game, perception is power. That's why Germany is investing not just in tanks, but in information warfare, countering Russian narratives, building alliances, and showing the world we're not hiding behind history anymore. So, what started as a simple troop deployment is now a front-page signal to the world. A message that NATO's eastern flank isn't just being defended. It's being fortified for a new era of global rivalry. So where does this all lead? Are we inching toward another Cold War? Or something even hotter? Because this isn't just about deployments. It's about decisions that will shape the next 50 years. Let's be honest, tensions aren't going away. Russia isn't backing down. NATO isn't retreating. And caught in the middle are the people living right next to the front lines. In small Baltic towns, civilians now live with the rumble of foreign boots. Some feel safer. Others, more nervous than ever. Because where soldiers go, war may follow. And in Germany, the change is even deeper. A generation raised on peace and prosperity now faces the reality of rearmament. Germany is no longer just the economic engine of Europe. It's becoming a military pillar too. But it's not all grim. This could be NATO's moment to evolve, to become faster, more unified, more resilient. Germany's deployment could be the beginning of a stronger Europe. One that's not just reactive, but proactive. Because the next war, if it comes, won't just be fought with missiles. It'll be a battle of narratives, alliances, supply chains, and cyber networks. And the side that wins won't just have weapons. It'll have will. Germany knows this. That's why it's not just building bases. It's building trust. With Poland, with the Baltics, with the world. And maybe, just maybe, this is a turning point not toward war, but toward prevention. A moment where the memory of the past finally becomes the shield for the future. Because in the end, that's what this is all about. Not tanks, not missiles, but peace through strength, through unity, through readiness. Because the cost of unpreparedness is far, far higher. So, as Germany plants its boots in Lithuania, the message is clear. Europe has changed. The world has changed. And now, history is watching. The only question left is, what will we do with it? Let's talk about Poland. Right next to Lithuania, right next to that fragile Suwałki Gap. Poland has been one of the most vocal, most prepared nations in NATO. They're not waiting around. They're building the largest land army in Europe. Poland remembers history. They've been caught between empires before, between Moscow and Berlin. And this time, they're saying, never again. They're buying US Abrams tanks, South Korean howitzers, Turkish drones, and training with American forces on a near-daily basis. And it's not just Poland. Look north to Finland and Sweden, countries once proud of neutrality, now flying NATO flags high. This is NATO 2.0. Bigger, faster, no longer just a Cold War relic, but a living, adapting shield across an entire continent. But what about diplomacy? Isn't there still a chance to cool things down? Avoid a showdown? Absolutely, if world leaders want it. The back-channel talks never stopped. Even now, diplomats are trading quiet messages. The problem? Neither side wants to look weak. And in geopolitics, pride can kill peace. There's also a wild card. The 2024 and 2025 elections. In the US, in Europe, in Russia. One major shift in leadership. And everything could change. So what should ordinary people do? The ones who live near these borderlines? Or who just want to raise their kids in peace? Right now, they're watching nervously. They've seen what happened in Ukraine, and they fear it could happen again. Mothers are teaching kids how to pack emergency kits. Schools are updating bomb shelter maps. Churches are handing out leaflets on civil defense. It's the kind of preparation no one ever wants to make. But don't underestimate the power of these communities. In times of crisis, they become strong, organized, focused. Because when governments hesitate, people lead. And in the midst of it all, Germany's soldiers are learning something, too. They're no longer just warriors. They're guests, ambassadors in uniform, living on foreign soil, building new bonds. This isn't just military training. It's cultural training, learning Lithuanian customs, celebrating local holidays, understanding the people they're here to protect. Because when soldiers become part of a community, it changes the whole story. It's not about invaders or occupiers. It's about guardians, trusted allies. This is the future of NATO, not just alliances on paper, but relationships on the ground. And that's something missiles can't destroy. Still, the stakes remain sky high. All it takes is one mistake, one wrong signal, one miscalculation, and decades of peace could unravel in seconds. That's why this story matters, not just to soldiers, not just to leaders, but to everyone. Because war doesn't need your permission to knock on your door. So as Germany strengthens its presence, and Russia recalculates its next move, the real battle is for time. Time to prepare. Time to negotiate. Time to decide what kind of future we want. And maybe, just maybe, this story will end not with sirens, but with silence, with tension that slowly fades, because cooler heads step forward before it was too late. In this fragile moment, surrounded by fire and frost, Germany has made its choice to defend, to stand, and to say clearly, we remember our past, but we will not repeat it. The world is watching. Let's hope it's also listening. What's your thought on that? Comment below.